not gonna say it's a failure of parenting, but it is a little bit of an ego hit to you as a parent being like, I couldn't fix this, right?
Yeah.
You know, parents are fixers. So you get a problem, you fix it. You know, you're living for your children essentially. And so when you have to kind of make that intellectual leap of like, I can't, this is not a me fixing it thing, right? Like if I can make a bazillion schedules and structures and set them down and talk about this. And, I think making that decision where you're saying, this might be something that is not something that can be fixed inside the family. We need to ask other people for help and maybe even have to put them on a medication for help. It was a little difficult for us.
They said that we'd grow out of it. Well, the joke's on them, that's just our brains. We're eccentric, loud, and stubborn. And most of our clothing is covered in stains. It's not a deficit of attention. There's just too much to think about. So if executive dysfunction becomes a little too much, if you forgot why you came in this room, or you're hypersensitive to touch, then put on your seamless socks and come join our little flock. Bitches stimming together, we're weirds of a feather. Weirds of a feather. Welcome to Weirds of a Feather, an AuDHD-Adjacent podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Stanhope.
And I'm your host, Grace Bray.
And again, we have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Ted. Thank you and welcome for joining.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
I guess we'll just get right into it. I have a warm-up question. And I think I've asked you this before in the OR. But I'm on like a big centaur trend right now. I can't get over.
She won't.
And I won't. And we've asked this before, how do you think centaurs sleep? Like, what do you think, what position? Because I'll tell you, I'm really worried about the horse-human spine junction. I feel like that's a really key point, but also a really weak point. So how do you support that while sleeping?
Maybe they sleep in a water. Like, what if they slept in like a lake?
That
like
changes
people
the game.
kind of do rehabilitation.
Yeah.
The water supports the muscles and joints.
Because horses swim, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And they could just maybe go up to a certain point at which like that, the buoyancy supports their limbs. So maybe they sleep like chest high in like a lake.
Yeah.
I like that, chest high in the lake, yeah.
And it also might be things to nibble that kind of float by.
Oh, yeah.
So like, you could get
water lilies.
Lunch.
Yeah.
I
never
hadn't even considered that angle.
have not.
Wow.
I'm glad we brought it up.
Opens up a whole new avenue
were thinking,
of the
like,
centaur conversation.
A specially formed like moss pillow that they could lay down on. Someone said just sideways. We got a lot of ideas, but I never thought about the water.
Wade into a nice pond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be beautiful. Cooling.
What if they had one of those? Have you ever seen those like weird things that babies wear around their necks to keep their heads afloat
Yeah,
that are
in
like
water.
kind of dangerous?
Yeah.
Yeah. They could have one of those.
Yeah.
Make sure they don't drown accidentally.
Yeah. That might be the answer that you're looking for, Kristen.
That's
would
the
be
best answer we've had yet.
Cold in the winter, but if you're a centaur, you're probably not worried about it.
True.
Yeah,
If you're a
you've got
centaur, you're probably
fur.
Body heat.
Yeah.
I guess my other question is, where do you think they have two sets, like human and horse lungs, or do you think they just have one set of lungs?
I'd say I would probably say one set of lungs.
You think it's horse or human?
I think it's probably, say horse. Okay. Well, I think of a centaur, I think more horse than human.
Same.
Yeah.
Like horse seems like the business end.
Yeah.
So I say if you're going to go business end horse, lungs horse.
The humans just for show.
Yeah, just for sure.
So mostly horse, but then horses, vegetarian, herbivores, humans, omnivores. What do you think a centaur would be an omnivore or an herbivore?
I think that part, because I look at the centaur's body, I think of like the guts of a horse.
Right, because they have like multiple. Do they have multiple stomachs?
I
Right.
don't know if it's like a cow where they have a bunch of stomachs or, but either way, I think it's going to be an herbivore. I think it's.
Same.
I think humans are
vegan.
a lot of humans. I think we're maybe evolving into herbivores in the long run, and so the horse has already got it. It's already doing it.
It's already there.
I think that horse human hybrid is going to be like a herbivore type person. type
the,
thing.
the body is a horse. So yeah, you want to put in whatever the horse is able
That
to
horse
digest.
needs all those herbs,
Grass.
grass and
Alfalfa.
such. Oats.
They need it.
Corn.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
On a good day, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I got.
Right.
I've been on this centaur kick. I just can't understand how they exist. And they don't, which is the bottom line.
There's your
but-
answer. Yeah. Keeps her up at night.
Yeah, it
How
does.
this mythical
How
All these
does it work?
hypotheticals.
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
Worry about the
it's-
spine. The horse-human spine
the
junction.
Human spine junction connection. It's a weak point.
Think of the
That's how you
junction.
take them down. You just one tap and they're done. Right?
Maybe you should
those-
publish like a centaur anatomy textbook.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
That's the
That's
logical
what it-
offshoot of this
yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, right above.
Because would the human part be all just like esophagus? Like what's if the heart and the lungs and the gut are all in the horse body, what's in the human body?
I think it's just I think
Magic?
magic,
Mm.
and I think if the big thing is the ability to talk, maybe there's some vocal cords in there.
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely need vocal cords.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a great answer because
Yeah.
gosh,
And
she's been
unique.
stuck on this.
And I still will be. I won't.
You'll never stop.
I'll never stop. But
I think that's why you have to write the book.
I do.
So you can point to it
Yeah.
as like, here's the
Like,
Here it
definitive
is.
answer.
Some
Like,
anatomy.
we have answers now,
maybe
and,
like
and they're
a
right here.
poster form of
Yeah.
like centaur. Now it's got to be somewhere on Google. I'll look into it.
Okay.
It will happen.
All right.
But yeah, all right, we can move on.
Yeah.
So our next segment is called "This Is Who I Am Now." So with people with ADHD, often have these like hyper focuses, and they could be like a minute long, or they could be like 3 years long, or 10 years long. They have these hyper focuses, and they go in and out of like multiple hyper focuses. So we have this segment called "This Is Who I Am Now," where we kind of describe what we're like really into right now, currently. And we get a song to go with it.
Yep.
Where?
There's no kazoo.
I thought we were kazoo.
We're doing This Is Who I Am.
Oh,
now.
yeah. No, that's toward
Quirks.
the end.
Yeah.
Never mind. It's okay. We've only been doing this for 3 years. So,
You'll get it one day.
do you want to sing the song?
Yeah, we can.
We can
yeah,
sing the
we can
song. So-
well, we need Ted to do the round with us. Yeah.
So the song goes, "This time it's different. Everything has changed." And then as a round, I go, "This is who I am now." And then you'll go, "This is who I am now." And then Grace will go, "This is who I am now." And the purpose is to draw it out and to be like as flat as possible and to hold it as long as possible.
Yeah.
The
Makes for
worse,
a really
the
nice
better.
sound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it really harmonizes.
listeners will love it,
The-
So Kristen can
It's-
point to you, and it's your turn to do.
Yeah.
This
And I
is-
say, this is where this is
you
who
go,
I am
"This
now.
is who
Yeah.
I am now," and then
hold it.
Yep.
hold it.
Okay,
and we'll
until
all
you
kind of
can't.
hold it. Yeah.
And it's going to sound real good,
yeah.
I'm ready.
theoretically.
Okay.
All right. This time it's different. Everything has changed. This is who I am now.
This is who I am now.
This is who I am now.
Beautiful.
That's good.
Voice of an angel, Ted.
Yeah. Great harmonizing.
That's fantastic. And then, in your most whimsical voice, I'll do it to Grace first.
Yeah.
You got to ask, who are they now? All right. So, Grace,
Yes.
who are you now?
I am a girl with a bob. I chop my hair off.
You do.
And now it's about bob
You have a French
legs.
bob. I think it
I
looks
look like
great.
a pencil.
No, you don't look like a pencil. I think you look great.
I did. I felt like a pencil for the first couple of weeks, and now I
No.
feel like it's. You didn't see me the first couple of weeks, but I feel like
I
it's
saw you
grown
the first
out.
week.
No, you didn't. I feel like it's grown out enough where I'm happy with it.
I think it looks great.
Thanks.
I think you were meant to have a bob this whole
Thanks.
time.
The trick is to.
You've got a bob head.
I do have a bob head for bobs. The trick is to not look like my mom. No offense,
Yeah.
mom. I love her, but she always has the kind of classic bob, but she's got the bangs. And
She's got the bob borderline bowl cut.
Mm.
So I think
Yeah.
there's a difference between your bob and her bob.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel
And
like
there's nothing wrong with her haircut. I think it looks lovely on
no,
her.
I think it's great for her. Yeah, I wish she hadn't given us bowl cuts as children as well to kind of match with her, but it is what it is. But yeah, that's the other trick is to have a bob without it looking too bowl cutty.
Mhm.
Because
Or
I've been there.
what's the little guy from Shrek?
Little
king.
Lord Farquaad.
Yeah.
Yeah. / little lad. Yeah. Little lad who loves berries and cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's a fine line to walk.
I think you pull it off nicely.
Thank you. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
All right, Kristen.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I am a big water drinker because I never drink enough water. And one day I forgot to flush the toilet and Christopher was like, "Do you have kidney disease? How are you alive?" So I've been shamed into I've got a new water bottle, which hurts me a little bit because I'm very attached to my old water bottle. And I wrote a whole podcast episode about it.
You literally did, yeah.
But this one has, it can hold more water.
4 gallons.
It's a liter, so almost. and it has these like passive aggressive things on the side, along with
going.
along with the timeline.
I wouldn't have pegged you for army green.
Army green. It's an
surprised.
olive green.
Yeah. Okay.
But I guess that's kind of the same as army green. But yeah, I like the green.
I like the green too.
Nice bottle.
But yeah, and it's glass, which was a mistake. I thought it was plastic because I don't trust myself with glass, but we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, but then you're not drinking out of plastic, and that's nice.
That is nice. So we'll see. Well, the straw's plastic, so yeah.
Maybe it's because you're running around at work, taking care of everything, and you forget to drink water.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah.
Gotta take time out for water.
Right.
Yeah,
so
it's important.
I figured if I can be shamed into it, I'll probably respond better. So.
Do you respond? Do you like the slogans? Because they would make me mad. They would make me like
I
kind
like
of
it.
be
I like,
oppositional.
more so than the slogans, I like the timeline. Like right now I'm drinking, what is it, like 3 o'clock, and I've drank only about 9 a.m.'s worth of water. So
it's
it's
not helping them.
It helps most of the time, just not today.
Okay.
But I do like the timeline. I like having rules.
Yes, you do.
And this is a new rule I get to follow.
And that could be a good strategy for those of you out there who struggle with water. If you don't like the little slogans, I think the timeline does give good rules. It's a good way to
I like
put
the
it.
rules. And
You
so
love a rule.
far, so good. And this one's easier to clean, which is my number one issue with water bottles. Sometimes they're hard to clean.
I hate that.
So
Do you ever put those little droplets in to flavor it, or are you just a straight water person?
I used to. I was on a big, like the Mio drops.
Yes,
I was on the
yes.
big,
Yeah,
the
you loved
orange
those.
ones was like my favorite. And then one day I just stopped and I drank regular water. And I was like, well, this is also good. And I haven't looked back. But yeah. But Ted, you know.
Right now, I'm big in.
Sorry.
Right now, I'm big into aliens.
Oh, really?
You know, I love the old science fiction books. You know,
So like
growing up.
science fiction aliens or like the government and like the Tic Tac formation and whatnot?
I'm more of like a science fiction alien guy.
Okay.
I recently read a book
X-Files
called The
style.
Dark Forest,
Mm-hmm.
which is a super cool book. And it talked about how basically there's an alien force that's coming to obliterate Earth. Earth knows about it. And so they freeze a human brain and they send it out in a rocket out into the universe for them to discover.
Whoa.
Just a brain. The idea is when they find the brain, they reverse engineer a human, because if you're smart enough to travel across the universe, you could do that.
Yeah.
And the human will lie to them about the location of Earth because these aliens can't lie.
What a concept. Have you
Yeah.
heard of the Dark Force theory
Yes.
of like the thing that's out there?
That the idea that any beam of light, any point of light must be extinguished because it could represent a threat. I think that's something that I've read a little bit about. But I told my wife and my family, I said, if aliens come down and land in our driveway and they open up the door, I'm going in.
That's fair.
Because if they show up and they open up the door, it means they're probably friendly. They're probably looking to kind of get to know you a little bit. And we have a working agreement that if they show up, kind of Close Encounters of the Third Kind style.
Yeah.
You know, style.
But you're kind of the breadwinner of the family.
Yeah, I'll get right on. There'll be like an alien severance package or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll work it out.
That's fair.
I could send back some alien money or something to the family.
They probably got it all figured out.
Still be a provider.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you're just ready to kind of
I'll get right on. Like I got a little bag like next to my bed. Just like the doors
is
open
it.
up, the lights go on. I go right out the driveway, get right on, and up we go.
Get your
I'm
alien
ready.
go bag and you're ready.
I'm
Are
ready.
you
No
worried about
questions. All
alien diseases? I think my concern would be like just how when white Europeans colonized the Americas,
as came all of their diseases like smallpox. Are you worried about getting alien diseases?
Well, maybe I'll give them disease. I'm like
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like a human
especially working in
smallpox blanket.
vascular surgery.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows what I've got on me?
Yeah.
But it's kind of,
You
I do
wipe
worry
out a
about
whole
like
race of aliens.
War of the World style. But you figure, if they could make it here, hopefully they took that into consideration. But you don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be just me alone on that ship. After a while, they all would die.
What do you think
I'd have to learn how to
about
pilot it.
like all the
that'd be
new
tough.
stuff coming out with the government about like the Air Force like finding these Tic
I think
Tac
it's-
things and
I
the
think
orbs
it's
and
fascinating.
Yeah.
You think about this universe as this ever expanding cosmos of zillions of galaxies and stars, and why shouldn't and couldn't there be the right combination of
Right.
life out there? Maybe we have no idea what that is, where it is, etc. But I find it as a fascinating concept.
yeah. I think it's
too.
crazy not to believe in aliens.
Right?
because
I think it's
so
ignorant
big.
to be like, this is it.
This is it. Like
Yeah.
this is
I
all,
always
the only place it
wonder,
worked
like-
out. Was like, I don't know about that.
What do the
Yeah.
flat earthers think about this? We have to interview a flat earther.
I
one
do
day.
not want
Just-
to.
I just
I'm
out
not
of
interested
sheer
in doing it.
fascinating. Like, what?
It's a lot of.
Do you think a
logical
flat earther is
fallacy.
just a contrarian that really knows the truth? I think those
I
people
think that's
are
like
out there.
90%, and
Yeah.
then there's like 5 people who
That
are like,
really
no, I
believe it.
really think that
Yeah.
this is it.
Like I'm gonna kind of get some attention for myself by saying something like totally crazy, even though I know in my heart it's false.
Yeah.
That's sometimes what I think about people like that, but who knows?
I also think it's a self-protection strategy, where, it does feel safer and easier to believe that there's nothing else and this is it.
Yeah.
And like, there's no other possibility of anything. Like
Yeah.
it does feel, I feel like
But doesn't
comforting
that
in a way.
feel wild? Like there's nothing. There's nothing.
Yeah. But I think it's safety. If this is it, that feels safer than the unknown. People like to have answers.
It's all about us and me, and
Yeah.
I get you.
I think it's
get you.
ego based. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I approve of it, but I last podcast did an episode about it a couple of years ago, and Marcus, because I was always like, these guys are fucking nuts, which I still think they are.
They are.
But Marcus made that good point that it's kind of like a lot of religions where it gives you this comfort of knowing what is out there and you can feel like secure in that knowledge. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. If aliens came, I think I would. I always think if there's like a zombie apocalypse or something, everybody's like, I would survive. I don't think I would survive. I think I'd be like first one down. And I think I would die if there was an alien invasion. I'd actually I'd just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I'd get like landed on by
It's
a
like
ship.
squash
yeah.
you right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, we got one.
I'm like that
I
that
see that.
extra in the movie
Yeah.
that dies right off in like a weird, silly way. That's me.
Mm.
But maybe if the aliens aren't really nice, that's the best way to go out.
I'm
Because
okay.
Because what
with
happens if
it.
they like slowly ate you?
Yeah.
Like you'd be like, man,
Right.
I'd rather would have squished
or
at
like
the
the
beginning.
experiments?
Yeah.
No,
I
thank
don't want to
you.
be probed.
No,
But I
no.
do
Depends on how
kinda wanna
it
know.
depends on what the aliens look like.
True.
Yeah.
Maybe they're hot. Maybe they're hot.
Like a
Maybe
hot
they're
alien shows up, wants to
good-looking-
probe you,
You're
you
like-
may change your mind.
Please give me that probe. That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about hot aliens.
Pot.
What if they're sexy?
Couple, a couple of alien cocktails, and who
Yeah.
knows what'll happen.
Yeah. Get the night going.
All right. So today for our episode, I was thinking we could talk about. So our last episode, we was kind of a heavy. I wouldn't say heavier episode, but we talked about some serious stuff.
More
Like
informative. Yeah.
it was informative. We talked about smoking. We talked about vascular disease. But Ted, you have a personal connection with ADHD.
Yes.
And so besides me and Grace, do you have any friends or family with ADHD?
Yeah, I have a son who's now 15, who, by the way, I spoke to him last night and I said, I'm going to go on a podcast tomorrow and talk about you. And are you comfortable with this? Because I want you to be.
Mm.
And you better be.
Because I'm gonna do
But
it.
he was. And
Oh, good.
he smiled at me and said, sure, Dad, I think that's a good idea.
Does he think podcasts are cool, or is he
I
like,
think he
that's so
thinks
lame?
no, I think he does think podcasts are cool. And I think more and more he's coming, kind of evolving like how we all do, that kind of frontal lobe, and you're a preteen, you're an adolescent. And I think he's kind of evolving as a young man, so to speak. And he kind of like, yeah, I'm okay with this. I've been diagnosed with ADHD and it's part of me. It's not a stigma. It's a life thing that I'm working on. And, we're talking about that. So he got a big smile on his face. And I said, we're going to probably talk about this tomorrow. Are you comfortable? He says, yeah, of course I'm comfortable. Maybe one day you can have him on and you can ask him about it. But
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I first know, it's interesting because, I have 3 children and I think as far as I can tell, we try to raise them all the same way, but they're three totally different human beings.
Yeah.
That becomes readily apparent, I think, in all families at a very early age. He was kind of a gregarious, talkative kid growing up, and lots of friends, very easily adaptable, like the type of kid that when we drive down our street, like kids like come out on bikes and like follow the
He's
car.
a cool kid.
He's a cool kid, right? And he has a nice...
I don't know what that's like.
No.
I never did either. I was a little bit more introverted and nerdy, but he has a little bit of a different aura where, he's got this friendly, non-judgmental, social way about him. People are drawn to him, and all sorts of people, all sorts of places. But certainly from a kind of a school perspective, the first inkling I got that maybe there was something going on was when he was in 3rd grade. I was at a local Catholic school, which looks like all Catholic schools, 100 years old, all the bricks and the brown tiles and the saints looking down at you in the hallway. And we're all lined up, several parents and I, going to our parent-teacher conference.
Uh-oh.
And we're all sitting there, and you feel like you're really going to see the principal's office, right? It's like a serious, strict Catholic school environment. And
Were there nuns there?
Nuns, yeah, still a few nuns. And I went to Catholic school, and it reminded me of when I was a boy, that same kind of Catholic school. They all seem the same.
You're having flashbacks, yeah.
PTSD, yeah. And so finally it's my turn, and I'm sitting there waiting my turn. And the teacher, kind of lovingly says, "Oh, Nathan," kind of does this kind of hand waving. And she went on to tell me kind of a funny story, which was that day in class, for whatever reason, they had a little bit of a break. It was around 10:30 or 11 in the morning. And he ate his lunch, like his entire lunch. Like he ate his entire, but it wasn't lunch yet. And then lunch came around about an hour later as scheduled, and he was frantically looking for his lunch. He runs up to his teacher and says, "Someone stole my lunch. Someone ate my lunch. It's not in my cubby. It's not in the area." And she laughed and said, "Nathan, you ate your lunch 45 minutes ago." And so that was where I first got this, inkling that, he was, it was maybe attention and focus was not his, was becoming a little bit of an issue for him. And then, I think all parents, lovingly think their kids are super intelligent, right? We all have our friends that says, my 3rd grader just read War and Peace. But I do think Nathan is, if you were to quantify or put it on a curve or put some number on it, I think he's a pretty bright kid.
Yeah.
I really do. I really think he's a pretty bright, above average kid. And so I think that got him through middle school, where he wasn't necessarily paying a lot of attention or prepped or ready, but he kind of could get by because he'd show up for that test, have enough there to get pretty good grades. And so we started to see that slip a little bit in kind of 7th and 8th grade. He's now in 10th grade. And then really things started to come into big focus in 9th grade, where at his school, he had to move around a lot. He had a lot of different teachers, a lot of different buildings, a lot of different folders, a lot of different markers, the calculator and the phone and the computer and all the devices. And he really, really struggled with that. It really, it became apparent that, it was really getting to him. I think he hit a kind of a low point that 9th grade as far as trying to stay organized, stay on top of things. And finally, I got one of the teacher emails that we got saying, your son's struggling and we need to talk about it.
Uh-oh.
And so I think my wife and I talked a lot with each other. We kind of understood that this was in the background, right? And so, and we understood that the ADHD was the big question, right? And we know as parents.
Well, you also, I remember, said often in the OR, you're like, "Oh, my son, he's so smart. He just doesn't," you did the classic parent, like, he just doesn't apply himself. He doesn't apply himself.
That's right. You're right.
And I don't want to say I told you so, but I was
you
like,
told me so.
That really sounds like.
But if you think about it this way, if you called me up and said, your son broke his leg skiing, here's a picture of his broken leg, I would, in a second, consent for a surgery for him. If you told me your son can't breathe, he's got bad asthma, here's a test that proves it, would you prescribe him an inhaler? I would. But there's so much gray area there. And I think there's so much gray area. It's not a number. The criteria, the tools that seem to be used can be can be a little bit gray area, a little bit ambiguous maybe.
Hmm.
And as a parent, you do have that instinct, which is, when you get that email from the teacher, God damn it, I'm going to sit his ass down and I'm going to explain to him that this biology, we're going to make an Excel spreadsheet of biology, and he's going to sit his ass in the chair and we're going to make a schedule and it's going to be every 15 minutes and I'm going to be, so that's partially my type A personality of like organization, let's overcome this. And, you can not get over, but you can deal with this kind of inside the family. Like a family is a unit. You deal with your problems as a family before asking others for help. I think that's the way most families operate.
Sure.
And so you do view it when you get to the point. I'm not going to say it's a failure of parenting, but it is a little bit of an ego hit to you as a parent being like, I couldn't fix this, right?
Yeah.
Parents are fixers. So you get a problem, you fix it. You're living for your children essentially, and so when you have to kind of make that intellectual leap of like, I can't. This is not a me fixing it thing, right? Like if I can make a bazillion schedules and structures and set them down and talk about this, and I think making that decision where you're saying, this might be something that is not something that can be fixed inside the family. We need to ask other people for help and maybe even have to put them on a medication for help. It was a little difficult for us.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing for a lot of parents to acknowledge. And, as difficult as it was for you, you were able to like come to terms with it and talk about it. And a lot of parents aren't even able to get there because I think their brains just like shut down the idea of this. It's not something I can fix. And also I think there's a lot of shame around like, how did I miss this? And so it's almost like you want to just keep going in that denial because it's hard to face that shame.
And, when teachers introduce topics to you, I think as a parent, that teacher is looking at the benefit of all of their students. In a private school, you've got all these motivated, kind of wealthy kids that, that teacher has to put the entire group's focus in as what his or her benefit is. And so I'm looking at, I frankly only care about my son, right? So before I put him on a medication, we did try some sort of behavioral things. I didn't, we got a little bit of purchase with those, but I still think the medication ended up being the right choice. It did take us a little while to get there.
Yeah. Could you talk us, so your son's teacher recommended an ADHD evaluation or Yeah,
so I think there was like a guidance counselor that kind of collates information from like the teachers and approached us. And frankly, I didn't, in some part of me didn't like the way that happened, which was I was kind of told a diagnosis by email on a minor that I didn't ask them to evaluate. So part of it was like, I had a little bit of like this, my kid, it's great that you sent me this email. I didn't ask you for your opinion. Now, granted, I understand why they're doing it. And we never talked about this ahead of time. So part of me was like, well, fuck you. I'm going to figure this out and get it, And I realized that's not the response, but as a kind of a protective parent, that's kind of your
instinct. It's also like
instinct.
very alarming, like out of nowhere you get this email being like, something's wrong with
like,
your son. Not something's wrong with your son,
that's
but like.
And actually, I would prefer an email that said something's wrong, not an email that says, your son has X and we recommend Y. And I was like, well, that's an interesting way to look at it. And so, we were able to work our way back to, the big picture, what's the benefit for your son? And so we got what I thought was a very comprehensive, very well-worded, very professional behavioral health evaluation from someone who was absolutely fabulous. And I think that's really what we needed. And we were kind of dragging our feet a little bit. Maybe we can get structure at home. Maybe we can make an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe we can do all these things. But in the end, the crucial piece was this evaluation, which was basically like, on our quantitative scales, on our qualitative scales, and all these teacher recommendations, your son has significant ADHD. And it is not gray in this situation. It's not like a little bit. It seems like it's a lot. It's a pretty significant thing. And as we discussed, he was kind of doing okay for a while because he was kind of winging it. And smart enough to kind of get by. But again, in freshman year, there was so much organizational change in a school that moves pretty fast. We got behind pretty quickly.
Yeah. How long from like time of email to time of like diagnosis by like the behavioral health expert? How long did that take?
Probably a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
During that time, what we did though is we as parents, we knew at that point we had enough feedback and enough kind of self-knowledge to be like, he's going to need some help. It looked like, from our standpoint, all roads led to medication. At least that was our bias. And so the thought was, maybe we can do things that address his ADHD that we think he has, that his teachers support, that this guidance counselor supports, but not start medications. And part of it for me and Tina, and I think I speak for both of us. You heard me say me, but I think we're of relatively one mind on this. I correctly or incorrectly, I interpreted medications for ADHD as not necessarily a two-way toggle that flips back and forth between yes and no, medication and not, but kind of a one-way valve where you get kind of put into this system, the valve shuts, and you're on medications for a long time. And that may be the right thing to do. But I did have some kind of, I guess, philosophical and logistical questions on that. The philosophical ones were this. I have a son who's an adolescent that's born a certain way. By nature or by nurture, he's this way. And if I'm giving something in a bottle, am I impacting his aura, his essence of who he is? Am I creating someone that's, and you may look at me and say, laugh, these are silly things. But when you take maybe a developing brain, a frontal lobe that's developing all sorts of connections, and you introduce something outside of self, I think you have to at least consider this maybe.
Yeah.
And so, are we creating someone that's neither hot nor cold, but kind of tepid for his teachers? And that, again, I think part of it was my experience that I had with a couple people there. By the way, fast forward a year, he's doing awesome on the Vyvanse.
Oh,
but
yay.
anyways, these were my kind of our personal kind of holdups.
And I think from what I've heard from listeners and what we've read kind of on like Reddit boards and stuff, I think those are all very valid points. You don't want to decrease their sparkle or their essence, and they're a developing person, and you don't want to like throw a medication into that. And does medication, is it like the system that's failing him, or is it, his diagnosis of ADHD? Is there any sort of thing that can be done besides medication? I think those are all very valid points, and I think a lot of parents would have the same questions if they were put into your situation.
And I'll tell you, one part of me, I try to limit it to like 1%, is a conspiracy theorist. And I know, like, I imagine, those like 1980s movies where like information moves like on like a point of light. So anyways, I imagine someone types in Nathan McGillicuddy, Vyvanse in a computer. In this single point of light, this prescription goes down the wires, it goes east, it goes west, it goes north, and it goes south, goes across a river, up to some skyscraper where this marble-clad boardroom, there's like a Monopoly guy with a top hat.
It's RFK.
A top hat and a monocle sitting in front of a computer going, great, maybe we have another lifelong, medicated person, which again, I'll tell you how my thoughts have changed in the last year at the end, but that person has a factory with 1,000 people filling tens of thousands of bottles with millions of pills. And so I do think that sometimes in medicine, there's a tool that comes out, and it could be a revolutionary tool, but I do think it kind of biases our decision-making process. In other words, like when you get referred for an ADHD referral, what are the chances that comes back as, oh no, he's like no ADHD? Like I think it's kind of like probably going to go that way. And so I was a little bit reluctant to pull that lever, and you hear about shortage of medications. And I always wonder, like, what's the natural history? Is he going to come off? Is it going to be a side effect that he's on another one, then another one, 7 medications? They all have. So that part of my brain was working overtime.
Mm.
And again, fast forward a year, I'm glad we made the decision. I'm glad we made all these decisions to get the neurobehavioral evaluation. Absolutely essential to listen to people and not just kind of have my own, oh, I know how to do this.
Mm.
I'm a doctor, or, which is way out of my field to talk about this or to deal with this. And he's doing awesome, right? So
Yay.
he just came up to me yesterday for the first time in a long time, got a 93 on the bio test.
Hey,
It was a tough ass
wonderful.
test,
I
right? A
bet.
zillion questions, lots of matching on the first page, several pages, multiple choice, big essay at the end, big smile on his face,
Oh,
right? And
it's
he
wonderful.
gave me a hug.
Oh.
And I'm like, this is perfect for the podcast. But it
Yeah.
was true, spontaneous. And I think that, it's probably about the year anniversary of him starting the Adderall.
Really?
But more so than just the Adderall is the support, right? It's like the idea
Mm-hmm.
of, putting, maybe having a diagnosis and it's saying, I've got this diagnosis. I need to move forward and support his teachers. Some of the teachers, all of his teachers have been awesome. And I think part of these were kind of like parental biases that kind of get in the way of success for your kids. But at this point, I'm happy to say that he's doing really, really awesome.
Yay.
That's
so
wonderful.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations, Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's
Yeah.
He's like an amateur biologist now, I told him.
Yeah. Yeah. It really just like gives you the gas to do what you've always like seen you could do or wanted to do, but you just like didn't have
Yeah.
the gas
Yeah.
to do it.
And
Mhm.
he signed up. The other thing he told me this week, which again, spontaneously generated, not like me following him around, asking him questions, because sometimes I do that, which is he signed up for AP history for next year because he
Oh.
loves history. So he's
Great.
like a history buff, which I think is really cool because I think it's a sign that, AP, whatever, but it's a sign that like I see something that I like
Mm.
and I'm not going to let something get in the way of going out and doing what I want with that class. Even though it's a
Yeah.
harder class, I could maybe ratchet it down to an easier
Mhm.
class. And so I think in that way, I felt, I felt good for him for that,
Yeah.
and I think that, moving forward with these things, although it took us a little bit of time, I'm glad we did.
Mm. Yeah. I feel like, my school experience felt like I was so overwhelmed at all times. I didn't get diagnosed till I was 24 and put on medication. So I went through all of schooling without it. But yeah, I felt like I was so overwhelmed by the things I had to do that there wasn't any room or any dopamine left in the tank to seek out the things I actually wanted to do, which I would have enjoyed doing. But it just felt like school in general was just so overwhelming. I was just trying to like make it through the day and it didn't leave a lot of room to like pursue these passions.
He would be exhausted at the end of the day. You could see it in
Yeah.
his face. You pick him up from school and just kind of holding on
Mhm.
was really all he could do,
Mhm.
and I think having some help, whether it be, structural family help, support in the medication has helped him
Yeah.
a great deal.
That's so wonderful.
Besides medication, have you some people have looked into like exercise as therapy or certain behavioral changes or like cutting out red food dyes? Have
Yeah.
you looked into any other sort of therapies?
It's interesting. I figured out, I think I figured this out just after a few years he convinced me several years ago when he was, I don't know how old, to buy this huge trampoline.
Yes, I love
And
trampolines.
so this giant box came from like Minnesota, and it took me like a week. I put this thing together, which I'm not really good at putting things together, but it stood the test of time. And I think that trampoline is some sort of release for him because he's, even though he's now getting into 15-year-old on a trampoline, I mean, he uses trampoline. I think he uses exercise really. He loves to ski. It's hard to get consistent access to skiing all the time. But I think for him, things like that trampoline, bouncing around, getting some of that kind of physical energy out, I think is really important for him.
Bouncing is good
Allows
for
him to
your
focus.
nervous system too. It's
Yeah,
good for regulating your nervous system.
and it's almost like self-medication for him.
Yeah.
It's like a consistent thing he does. Like as soon as it's above 30 degrees, that trampoline is up and running. So it's interesting. I think you kind of figure out things that give you comfort. And for him, it's been trampoline, it's been exercise. I think he needs, when he comes back from school, he needs to be outside for a little bit to get some of that energy out a little bit and then kind of focus in on what he needs to focus in on.
Yeah.
Sounds like you and your wife are really understanding of his needs, and you're willing to kind of let him be the guide of what he needs instead of like, I feel like so many parents, they mean well, but when kids get home from school, especially kids who have ADHD and are falling behind, they're like, all right, time for homework. And just it kind of becomes very militaristic, and they aren't given that room to kind of explore what would make my body feel calmer and what would help my brain kind of reset. Like I think that's the most important thing as parents, is to just kind of be open to that.
Yeah. And I think, it took us a while to get there, because first thing you want to say, all right, like you said, everybody down to the desk, get the homework going. And, and you realize that, I think one is sometimes you just got to, it doesn't come naturally to me. You just got to like pump the brakes and give them room, and I have a tendency to not do that. And I think I have to sometimes restrain myself. My wife is much more patient and relaxed. And I think that helps. And I think sometimes you just have to say, you know what, I'm going to just, butt out here. He'll come to it in his own way. And he does. And by and large, he does do that. He has lost, I think, 11 debit cards.
Oh my gosh.
Which I tease him about all the time. Kids, nobody uses cash, neither do kids. And he's getting better. Like the interval between lost debit cards is getting longer. Which
That's
that's a good sign.
That actually,
and I know how to shut it down on my phone.
There you go. Yeah. I've lost a good handful of debit cards myself.
We all have. I am not out of that pool. I'm still there too.
Is he the type of kid that would like bring a backpack home with this like all the paper stuffed down in the bottom of the backpack?
The backpack is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
The backpack is same thing happens. So all right, we'll get color coded, alphabetized folders that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it's either it's just there's just going to be stuff in that backpack. It may be maybe a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
There may be several debit cards.
Yeah.
Maybe a crushed phone.
Yeah.
But the backpack is, I've learned to kind of just look the other way.
Yep. There's only so much you can do.
That actually led me into my next question is like, what traits, like ADHD traits, have you noticed in your son for better or for worse?
Yeah, I think for him, I think it's that there's just kind of this natural kind of curiosity around him. Like, and maybe it's that kind of distractibility, but I interpret it now as this kind of curiosity about the world. He likes to talk to people. When you go to a party with him, he'll talk to everybody. For a 14, 15-year-old, I went to a new job welcome party. I didn't know anybody. I went in December. He was working the room.
He's networking.
So, you know what I mean? Yeah. He got invited to go to Alabama to go to a football game. He got invited to go skiing with 2 different families who I'd never met.
They're like, I guess you could bring your dad if you want.
Whereas my middle son would be, who's so hyper-focused, type A, does his homework perfectly in the car ride home.
Oh my God.
He'd be in the corner glaring at everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But so and that's that kind of lovely part about having a family, is that everyone is so different. And so that's the part that I like about Nate. He has this kind of whimsical part of him that I think is very endearing. And I think people are drawn to that. You know what I mean? Like, here's this dude, he'll get into anything with anybody. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, I see him walking when I go to pick him up at school sometimes. He's getting his license soon. So pretty soon he'll be driving, but we still pick him up. And sometimes I'll see him like coming over with the jocks, the hockey players, or sometimes it's the basketball players, sometimes it's the drama kids and and he just kind of like rolls in between groups like that. And I think that's a nice personality trait for him.
That is nice.
Absolutely. An ambassador of the people.
Yeah.
What do you think, besides like his lovely personality, how do you think his ADHD helps him in life?
Yeah.
If at all?
No, I think he is, to this day, and I mean this with 100% certainty, I have never heard him say anything bad about someone. I don't know if that's his personality or the ADHD, but he has the same kind of aura that you do, which is a non-judgmental aura.
I don't know.
I think
I
think you have.
Yeah.
I would notice when I would be. Now I'm going to put the focus on you.
Oh no!
And I would notice. I would turn some corner in the hospital, some dark, dreary corner, like way in the back that no one goes to, and someone would be pouring their heart out to Kristen.
Oh, it's because I love gossip. I just want to hear all the stories.
I think you're being modest.
Yes,
I think it's
agree.
because you have a quality of acceptance. And I think that maybe it's just, again, your personality, your ADHD, or I don't know, maybe it's just your aura, who knows, whatever we want to call it, you share that with him, which is this, take people as they come, whatever they are. You don't apply your rules and rigid structures to them, and they have a beneficial relationship with you because they're comfortable with you. People are comfortable with you. They're not necessarily comfortable with me. They're comfortable with you, and he's like you in that way.
I think people, at least in the OR, I think they really like you, but I think they're so afraid to disappoint you.
Yeah.
And I think that's
see
because
that.
you're a likable
Well, they
guy.
fucking should be.
And-
Yeah.
Stay on the radio.
But I do think that quality about him, that kind of, I use the term in my brain, whimsy. It's this kind of like, I'll like, what's going on? I'll do this. Like, he'll go hang out with some kid like up the street who looks like he's about 5 years younger than him. I'm like, okay. And then he'll be with some older guy, fishing at the, and he's just kind of like a live and let live type of guy.
Kind of gives me like Kramer type of vibes,
Yeah.
if I'm reading it correctly, where he's always just like doing whatever
Always
with
doing stuff.
anyone.
Yeah.
You want to go for a ride?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, sure. Like I'm up for it.
anything.
Like,
Yeah.
and
I like
so
that.
he's got, in that way, I think that will serve him well. You just have to
sure.
find his kind of, talk about future, like what does the future hold? You have to find your niche and what makes you happy. And I think, I hope he can do that. And I think he will be able to do that.
And it's a great personality trait to not be. I feel like there's some people that are like, oh, he gets along with everyone, but it's kind of like they're apathetic, like they don't have
Yeah.
strong values, and they kind of get along with everyone because they don't. They're quiet and they don't make waves. I feel like some people are truly, genuinely like they get along with everyone because they're like interested in all these different groups of people, and just the non-judgmental thing. It's such a rare trait, but it's so wonderful when you meet those people who like make anyone feel welcome and
The
accepted.
people of the
and-
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People of the
That's
people.
what he is.
Yeah.
He takes after my father. He said he takes after like it's a
Your
gene.
dad is the most social
He
person
is the
I've
most-
ever met.
He's a bartender, and
That
you
makes
could go
sense.
up to him. He had this rare ability, I think, that few people have, is to instantly read a room
Mm.
and know how to relate to people. And I think
Mm.
because he was a teacher for 50 years, a bartender
Oh,
for 40,
God.
you could go up to him at the bar and kind of take him to the corner of the bar and say, I just murdered 2 people in cold blood. And it'd say, it's okay. It happens, completely non-judgmental.
Do you
It'd
think
make
that's where Nathan got it
make
from?
you comfortable immediately.
Yeah.
It must
Yeah.
skip a generation, like
Yeah.
baldness. But he's got that part of his personality.
Such a wonderful trait.
I have a question from Christopher. He said, did your son get a fidget toy at time of diagnosis, or was he expected to get that on his own?
Lacrosse stick.
Ah,
So the lacrosse stick, you can wiggle, you can twist, you can go backhand, you can go forehand, and so he'll often be cruising around the house with his lacrosse stick. And I think that is his. I hope he actually gets good at lacrosse from doing it too. But it's funny because he kind of considers it practice. I'm like, are you gonna like run and lift weights? I was like, no, I've been fidgeting. And I'm like, well, you gotta kind of maybe run a little bit or something. But that is definitely his go-to. And if you come to our house and at a random point, you'd probably see this person moving through all the windows with a lacrosse stick doing fidget moves with it, and that is definitely his baby.
That's a good one.
I think I played lacrosse in high school, and I tried to do that once, and my mom was like, no.
Yeah.
Never.
You're
I gave up.
Not, outside.
For about 2 years, I gave him not in the house, and then finally after a couple years, like, oh, screw it. In the house is fine with me.
Yeah.
I remember I would
cares?
practice throwing against the chimney, and one time I missed, and I got so close to the window, and she just opens the window, and she's like, Bridget, what the fuck? And I'm like, I'm sorry. She's like, go away from the house. Get away from here. And I just like,
Shoo.
Yeah.
wandered over to our neighbors. I'm like, hey.
Yeah. I got kicked out.
Yeah. I wasn't even inside. So just, if I could just do a little plug for any parent who's questioning medication or not medication, there have been several studies that have shown that children with ADHD who are been diagnosed and started on medication have this delay in onset of substance use, including smoking, or just not using at all. And it's almost like a medication has been known to be like a protective factor against substance use. But I'll step down and we'll get back to the silly stuff.
Oh, it's an important
But
point.
I think it's a good point.
Very important.
And as we're going through like our substance use kind of series, I think it's a good point to just recognize that, medication isn't for everyone, but it is showing there are more newer studies that are showing that it is protective against smoking and substance use.
Yeah. It's like they're going to seek out medication in one way or another,
Yeah,
whether
whether
it's
it's a
actual
cigarette,
medication or self-medication through
cigarettes that taste like garbage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whippets, lots of substances. And also ADHD medications have been shown to make a huge reduction in ADHDers have a shorter lifespan by 9 years of average, I think, because of accidents, especially driving. And medication reduces your chances of dying in a car accident by like 60%. Because we just have there's so much going on when you're driving. Yeah. It has a huge, huge impact on that. So that's great that he got medicated before getting his license. Yeah, I'm sure that makes you feel better.
When we were looking for houses, I'm so surprised we didn't get in a car accident, because anytime there was like a for sale sign, I'm like, look at that house.
You're the scariest driver.
I'm not a great driver.
She drives like she's doing improv and like she has to pretend like she's driving a wheel, but that's how she actually drives, shaking the hands
doing
back and forth.
80 on the highway.
Yeah, just like shaking.
9 and 3.
I'm not even just a one-hander, coffee in the other.
And it's no consistent gas pedal. It's on, off, on, off, on, off.
I just want to make sure you're awake.
I'm awake.
So we can die together.
Yeah.
And so here's my like last question, and we'll stop grilling you, kind of.
Well, then we'll get into a couple quirks and pizza secret.
Yeah, but it's going to transition hopefully fluidly.
All right.
Except when I have to explain it.
Here's hoping,
Here we go.
Yeah.
So ADHD and autism have been found to be highly genetic. Between you and your wife, who do you think passed down the ADHD gene?
Ooh, I have to say me.
You.
can
And I
see that.
There's
Same.
I'm sure on a spectrum of activities, a spectrum of characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would check the box on some of them.
I think you would.
And so I think, I sometimes I feel it in the office, especially a new office where I'm working. There's so many little things that can distract me. And then
maybe the two PAs you work next to were incredibly loud?
Yeah, no, or it could be that I think I learn, with new places, new environments, I get very distracted very easily. And I think I probably have a little bit of that I think I passed on to my son. My wife is so patient and deliberate. I always tease her that I'm the hare and she's the tortoise. She's slow and even and deliberate and not moving forward too fast and taking 2 steps. It's always kind of slow movement forward. And I'm sure that he got it from my side.
I think so too. And actually, I think I've only met like a handful of surgeons who weren't on the like neurodivergent spectrum. I think surgeons
You almost have to be.
Yeah, I feel like you can't go into surgery and be normal.
Yeah.
I just think you can't.
No.
Yeah.
And so now that you're kind of self-aware and you're learning about ADHD, we do this segment called I'm So Quirky, where we share little quirks about ourselves that sometimes are funny and cute and are like, oh, that's so silly that you ate your lunch and then forgot about it 45 minutes earlier. And sometimes can be like potentially devastating, like I forgot to pay this bill and now it's gone to collections. So you've been asked to do some quirks. But first, we have a song per every segment. We got a song.
Yep.
And this song
This is time for your kazoo.
This is time for we do a kazoo. And out there, you can actually pick your own kazoo if you want to kazoo with us. There's a bag right there. If you can pick your color, you can keep that kazoo. Those are our spare kazoos.
Mm-hmm. Our guest kazoo.
Guest kazoos. You're going with yellow.
I like yellow.
Yeah,
nice.
It's a good
Yeah,
color.
it's like a banana.
I don't have any orange for you.
Oh, you have a big one.
This is a gift
fancy one
from Christopher.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lead kazoo.
Lead kazoo.
Yeah. First chair.
It's kind of like a trial by fire.
Yeah.
And we can always fix it in post. Maybe.
There's only so much you can do to fix the kazoo, but it's easy to say we'll fix it in post. Yeah. Christopher will somehow magically, he'll do like a voiceover.
He's going to be listening to this being like, what?
I'm not fixing that in post.
Staying as is.
Yeah.
All right. You ready?
I'm ready.
Are your vocals warmed up?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You ready?
Are you ready?
Ready? Well, you're holding it wrong, so you're not ready.
It goes this way?
I can already tell you're not ready. Give it a little try out.
Yeah.
You gotta hum. It's more of a
It's
hum
like
than a blow.
It's like a yeah.
Whoa.
There you go.
It's been a while for kazoo
Yeah.
for me.
Came out strong.
You get to keep that. You can take that home.
You're not you leave it in the bag for the next person to put their lips on?
No, we don't recycle.
They get autoclaved.
Lucy just licks them in between.
Yeah.
All right.
People call me Stacy. Some people call me Fun. I'm just pregnant. Great.
You nailed it.
we got it.
You know what? Sometimes you're just gifted.
Exactly. Don't even need to practice.
Yeah, no notes.
Yeah, no notes. Perfect.
We're good on that.
Yeah.
So you've been asked to bring some quirks in, right?
I forgot, but I'm thinking of them right now. I have a couple.
That's great, because I also have quirks for you. Because we've known each other for a while, so I could start.
Why don't you start?
Okay. The first one I noticed first off the bat, and I was like, this guy's one of us, is that you're a big scripter. Like you script, you have, as in like, you have certain sayings that you say quite a bit as like a place filler when you don't know what to say, like a script.
I do. And I think I do that out of nervousness sometimes. I'll give you an example. Last Friday night, I had to do an operation. It was an emergency. Kind of a new crew. I don't know the team very well. I've been very busy the last couple of weeks. And so there are spots, and I think especially when you're doing those endovascular operations, where there's like, you have to kind of wait a little bit. And sometimes what you do doesn't work. And you have 6 or 8 people in scrubs looking at you like, well, what are you going to do next? And so I have this kind of handful of these like kind of, I call them non sequiturs. They're like little transitions. Well, let's see what happens. So I've kind of learned to develop that. I think when I'm trying to think like, what the fuck do I do next? And so I've learned to kind of do that. And it's probably a sign that, boy, I got to kind of work this out in my brain because this silence is so awkward. I find it almost soul crushing.
Yeah, I'm so paranoid about any type of awkward silence that I'm like overthinking it so much.
Well, I've noticed in the hallway, if you see someone you don't know, or but you don't want to have like a full-on conversation with them, but you want to acknowledge that they're there rather than just being like, hi, how are you? And like risking having to have a conversation, you just do a, what's up? And then you move on. And I think that's brilliant. I want to like steal it from you.
I like to, if I can avoid like the stop and chat.
Yeah.
Unless there's some business you know what I mean? Because I think we all like, maybe I shouldn't think of it like this way, but I think of the workday sometimes as, got to get the work done.
Yeah.
So I can go home without punching a clock here.
Exactly.
And in some ways, I think I also run out of small talk in about 2 to 3 minutes. I've got
that's why you have your scripts.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about the weather, maybe about the ball game, and then ironically, when I went up with Connor 2 weeks ago, I think he's kind of the same way.
Oh yeah.
So we hung out for like 2.5 hours, but I think we burned ourselves out of conversation in about 10 minutes. So I opened up with my usual 2 or 3 just kind of chat items. He gave me his 2 or 3, and then we kind of just stared at each other, stared in each other's eyes.
Well, Connor's interesting because you have to like force it out of him because I'll be like, hey, how's it going? He's like, good. Yeah. How's the job? Good.
I hate that. Like, give me something.
His lovely new wife was good at kind of bridging the gap. She kind she intuitively recognized it and would just kind of like introduce a new topic or ask my son a question. And so she was good. She was a good, a good MC.
Yeah. I would be like, well, what about this whole new hospital bio? Oh yeah, there's a lot going on. I'm like, hey man, I just asked you how's it going. But you also do my favorite joke. You have like a certain joke is when you're taking some sort of something out of the body, but it doesn't need to go down to pathology. You go, that's something for the cafeteria. Yeah. That's because the medical students, it takes them like 5 minutes to get it every single time. And they're like, really? Yeah. But no, it's so funny.
I used to work with this surgeon who he had all these sayings, and I stole some
That's going to be you.
His name was Belkin. In fact, when he retired, they gave him like a book that had all these sayings on it.
Oh,
jeez. Just a lot of cool sayings. And I think it's fun. It's something a little, because there's so much tension in the operating room, right? It's inherently a tense environment.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
really
it should be a little. You should be tense.
it should be tense, right? Because
you're operating.
But I think little moments that break up that tension, I think allow people to relax, especially when I'm new. You know, when people are kind of realizing, like kind of getting to know me and I'm getting to know them. That inherently tense environment, I think by the end of the day, you can feel it. You feel it in your body. And I think if you can just introduce a couple silly comic moments, maybe it makes a difference.
I also think OR culture is fascinating because you have to, as a surgeon, you have to, you're the star of the show. You have to run your OR, and like looking at how different surgeons run their OR, I think is fascinating because some people want like a really serious, all business, no nothing. And I think that's really intimidating for like new nurses and new techs, and it can you can almost set yourself up for failure trying to run a super tense OR. At the same time, if you have someone like super loosey-goosey, people aren't paying attention, no one's listening, you're going to set yourself up for, so you have to like walk this thin line of, you don't want it too tense, you want to be approachable, but you also want everybody paying attention. I think that's a hard line to walk.
It's a hard line.
It's hard to
especially
do.
It depends on the team, what their comfort level is.
Right.
And you kind of learn as you go.
It's also like how much of that is neurodivergence and how much is just like being a dad, and having these dad jokes that you just kind of have to say because you've had children and now you must repeat these jokes. It was like, say every time.
And poor Kristen was stuck with me all day, every Tuesday for 2 years.
Yeah, but you were also stuck with me, and I would try out all my new jokes on you, and they didn't really work. You got a lot of my failed warm-up questions.
Well, you know what? But I was a sounding board. Ironically, when we hired Kristen, it was COVID. And so I didn't see her face for about 10 months.
Isn't that weird when you see someone without a mask for the first time?
I'll tell you a couple things. One is I used to wonder if I wonder if she has like a purple chin with green stripes, like a forked tongue, like Avatar. It'd be so cool. Like if she kind of took off her mask and she's like an Avatar or something like that.
That would be cool.
But I'll tell you, there was one day and there was nobody in the office and no patients, so she could have her mask off. And it was like a Friday evening. I was about to leave. She was about to leave. End of the work week type thing. So she had her mask off. About 8 months in. And I finally saw her with no mask on. And we both blushed. As if I had seen her in the locker room changing.
Yeah.
Like literally, we both turned red. I kind of looked away. And it was like, and it was like a first day. It was kind of so funny because I was so used to seeing her with a mask that to see her without a mask, it was like the normal had changed, So I remember that. Well, I'm trying to divert from coming up with my
that's okay.
my
I have
my
one
answers.
more.
Yeah.
Well, when it's funny you say that because when Dr. Ricky came back, it was also during COVID, so he and I didn't see each other's faces for a really long time. And I think the second week he was there, he came into the office and he's like, "I need to see you in my office." And I was like, "Oh no, oh no!" And he goes, "Sit down, shut the door." And I was like, "Oh no." And then he takes off his mask. He's like, "Now you take off your mask." I was like, "Okay."
Hold on a second here, sir.
Do we need HR? It's intimate.
I was like, "Oh,
Did a
It's
chin
this
reveal?
weird mask culture,
But what happened is they put someone else's picture up on the website with my name, and he's like, "I knew that wasn't you." And I was like, "What are we talking about?" And he flips his monitor around. He's like, "They had the wrong picture here, and I didn't know what your face looked like, but I knew that wasn't your face."
It's like a black guy. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think he made a comment. He's like, "Good thing this wasn't your face" or something. I was like, "Oh my God."
COVID turned everything upside down.
Yeah.
But you have I've noticed you have a lot of hyperfixations, which is a big ADHD thing. One, the history of dialysis, your kidney presentation, which is, we'll have to have you come on Patreon or something and give your kidney presentation, your history of dialysis, because it's fantastic.
I'd love to hear it.
But yeah, you're really into that.
I'm really into dialysis presentations.
I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
But that's like your go-to presentation. It's your best one too. But it's you're fascinated by it.
Well, I like history. Like, you think about most of the things, at least that I do, are something that I've learned that someone's done before, right? But someone has to think about it originally.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember when I was a fellow, as like an apprentice surgeon, I always used to have a couple of slides about history. We had to do a ton of presentations. You had to do lots and lots of presentations. I would throw history in there. And a lot of people were like, "This is boring," and it doesn't really make it doesn't really add much, but I really love the history part of it. And
Mm.
so like I'm always thinking about maybe it's people with ADHD that have these ideas that are kind of quote unquote out of the box ideas.
Mm.
Like, who's the first person to figure this out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm like riding on their coattails from 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I think dialysis is one of those cool things where someone says, say, there's a problem here. How the hell are we going to figure it out? Well, let's try this. And in this day and age where everyone's kind of worried about getting sued and being cautious, you have to admire people that say, I'm going to take a chance on something to see if it works.
Well, I'm always fascinated by the development of like aneurysms and the repair, the endovascular repair, where the guy fixed it on his dog, right?
Yeah, you have to have an idea. It's like you have to have the balls to try, so to speak. And so, I think those that's like a very cool story to tell.
You
Before
think
you
the
get into all
dog
the
signed
boring
consent?
medicine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sign wolf consent. Yeah,
Paw print down.
yeah.
Yeah, I always think about that with recipes whenever I'm making a recipe. I'm like, who thought
Yeah,
of this? Who was the
someone had to
first
think.
person?
Who was the first person?
Yeah, to
It's
realize,
wild
especially
to
with
think about.
baking, it's like such a science.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah.
who figured out that you
Yeah.
put all these weird things together and it rises and it tastes good?
You can't even like correct your work if you mess up.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like baking. Protein bars,
I love them.
you love them.
I love protein bars.
It's your safety meal.
I can usually go about 2 months before like they get so gross to eat the same ones over and
I
over
hate
again
that.
that I'm like, I need a reset. I need a new protein bar.
Mhm.
I don't like to go to the cafeteria during lunch because I think it interrupts my flow. I want to keep working.
Mhm.
It's like my own little like thing I like to do. Like
Mhm.
it's like I feel like I've stolen an hour out of the day because I've been able to work during lunch, eat protein bars. Doesn't always work out that way, but yeah, I like protein.
Yeah, which
I-
one are you like focused on now? 'Cause
So
you've
right now
grown-
I got like the blue Atkins, which I don't think you're a fan of the Atkins ones.
not a fan of the
Not
Atkins.
a fan. I've got these other ones
Kind of tastes like chalk.
that I got at BJ's. I got a box of like 280 of them or something.
Mm.
The
And I've
Atkins?
had like 8, and I'm like,
Oh,
I have to
God.
eat 272 more of these things. Friggin' BJ's, because I'm also like one of those people that is like, if I buy something, I try to like see it through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I
You
wanna
can quit. It's okay
I
to
can't-
quit.
and I just
Give it to
now I got to
someone else.
eat
Yeah, Josh would
272
eat your
more.
protein bars.
Do you think he would?
Oh,
I'll
for
talk
sure.
to him.
Yeah.
I'll talk to him about
Do
it.
they have more than 100 grams of protein? He'll eat them.
Yeah, if he eats all 282 of them, he will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the protein bars. I'm always willing to try a new one. And who knows? Like if it turns out that they're bad for you, I'll probably be the first one to die. But I'm gonna keep going for now.
And you also, I don't know if this is still a hyper fixation meal, but you were really into pizza for a while.
Oh my God,
Mm.
pizza is my number one. I would eat pizza morning, noon, and night, every day, every hour. Frozen pizza, fresh pizza. I make my own pizza now, which I'm very proud of.
Oh, really?
I'm very proud of my own. I'm
you
such a
make the
terrible cook.
crust?
No.
Oh.
I buy the pre-made crust.
You have a
I put
pizza-
sauce and cheese.
Yeah. Do you have a pizza stone?
That's my big project for the summer.
Mm.
So I'm gonna get into big time into pizza making this summer.
You gotta get
I'm not
one
a
of
big
those-
grill guy. Like I don't eat a lot of like I'm not like the dad with like the steaks in the grill,
Yeah.
flipping the steaks and like
You could be pizza dad.
I want to
Yeah.
be pizza dad. Like
I
I,
love
feel
pizza
like
dad.
I could be a pizza dad.
I
Like I
think
feel
you-
like
I
I've
think
got
you
what it
should
takes.
be.
Yeah.
I like to get the toppings. Like I'm gonna go. Like maybe I'll get a pepper and I'll get some onions. I'll cut it up. So I want to be pizza dad. That's my big plan for the summer. I'm gonna be like shoving pizzas at everybody all summer
I'll
long.
eat a pizza.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah. You should get one of those outdoor pizza ovens.
I want to go big.
They're
like, I
always
real-
on Facebook Marketplace.
It's really like
Yeah.
the new phase of my life. I have 2 things I really want to do this year. I want to cook a shitload of pizzas, and I want to hike more.
Mm.
And I'll probably cook pizzas and not hike.
That'll
That'll
okay
end
to
up
have
being
goals.
that'll end up being
It's
what
okay
happens.
to have
Yeah.
goals. Yeah. And then my last one, Legos.
I do love Legos.
You love Legos.
I would tell you, I got to have you over because I think if you
I need to
saw
see
the
these
inside
Legos.
of my house, you'd be like, this is a child in an adult's body.
I
Mm.
think that's fine.
Because we don't have the like the art on the walls is like my kids' art that's been framed, like weird gumball machines that they made, and like collages from school, which is pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there's Legos everywhere. There's like
You're
Lego
fiscally
birds.
responsible
Yeah.
with your
Yeah.
decorating.
Yeah, and it's like it looks like the movie Big, like where Tom Hanks as an adult would hang out.
Yeah.
There's lots.
That
you know,
sounds
for-
like a fun place.
You know what I got for my birthday? I got this beautiful, gorgeous Lego astronaut. And it's like this
like a big one?
Big one.
I think I saw that on TikTok.
He's got a beautiful gold mask and the oxygen tanks. It's that iconic picture they took from where you can see the astronaut in the back. Is that they call it the blue dot? It's from outer space looking back towards Earth.
It's that astronaut.
It's that astronaut in that pose, arms in the same position, same uniform. Absolutely cool. And I also got a jazz set, 4 jazz musicians.
Legos or just actual jazz musicians?
No, they were. I would.
Yeah, he took
actual,
4 jazz musicians.
But I'm into Legos. I'm into Legos. I've always been into Legos, and my house looks like it.
Hey, we've got Legos here too, and we don't have any children at all. So
I think the only Legos we have are the Legos you get us. You get Christopher. Who loves the Legos that you get him.
I can have you guys come over and hang out with us. We'll build Legos.
You'd love it.
We'll have a Lego party.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Should we get into pizza secrets?
Yeah.
I think it's time.
Finish it up with pizza secrets.
Finish it up. We got one last song per usual. Yeah. All right.
This is our best one.
It's our best one, and it's our easiest one.
Yeah. I think you should join in.
I think
on
you
this
should
one
join.
if you're willing.
I'm game.
The lyrics are simple.
It goes
pizza secrets, tell me your secrets, and then really high, pizza secrets. It's our best song. We're lyricists.
We are something special. Yeah. All right. Are we ready?
I'll wait for the countdown.
Okay.
All right.
Pizza secrets.
Tell me your secrets. Pizza secrets.
You know what? You went for it, and I respect it.
Yeah.
That's right. I do not have a good opera voice.
This is beautiful.
Us. Yeah.
We're not classically trained, but you wouldn't
Believe
know
it or not.
Yeah. So pizza secrets are, and I think I said this in the email, it's like kind of like a shitty thing you kind of did, but
not kind of, you did it.
You did it. You did it. It's not a crime because when we first started this podcast, a lot of people like confess their crimes. Like I stole this. It's not a crime.
Unless it's a child crime. If it's a child crime, it's okay.
Child crimes
nothing
are
that
okay.
can be prosecuted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing that can be
all right.
prosecuted. Technically.
Statute of limitations has passed.
We can disguise your voice.
I took your advice somewhat literally.
Okay. Okay.
Very interested to hear this.
And it's just kind of like a shitty little thing that's like kind of funny, but it's like kind of shitty, and it's almost like cathartic to kind of like get it off your chest.
Yeah. I'm ready.
All right.
Okay. I'm ready to hear it.
So in the medical field, we have to take call nights and weekends. And so you would work the work week, some long nights sometimes, then have to work the weekend and then the entire next week. So by that 14th day or whatever, that Friday, I would be tired and bitchy and grumpy. And I knew what I had ahead of me, which was like a long day of people asking me questions in the office. And I also know that I cannot digest red peppers. And so I knew if I ate half of a red bell pepper, I would fart for like 24 hours. So I would sometimes eat a red bell pepper Thursday night, which I actually love the taste of. And I would wake up the next day and just fart for like 12 hours.
Full of farts.
Hoping that if I created enough bad smell in my office that people wouldn't come in. It didn't generally work, but something cool did happen, which was the office was big enough that at the threshold of the office, you wouldn't really notice. But as you got closer to my desk, where like I had to sign something or look at an X-ray on the computer, there would be this point at which the person smelled it, and they would make this like imperceptible little kind of nose twitch or like mouth twitch, and then awkwardly leave the room.
And you have no shame about that.
I do now.
You should have any shame.
Now that I've like mentioned
You're
it,
just hacking the system.
But I knew like by that Friday, I'm like, I need a little something. Like I literally like I would fantasize about I have an old fashioned ignition in my truck. Put the key in, turn the ignition, and off you go. And I would literally fantasize on Fridays of the time of my hand. I could picture my hand putting that key in the ignition, and I was up for any advantage I could get. And so
I get that.
That's what I did.
Yeah. I respect that. I am also always looking for any type of excuse to like get out of work, not have to do something, avoid people. So I'll take any reason to not do something. So I get that.
Weird that
Sometimes-
it's red pepper.
Yeah.
Green pepper I can do okay with, but red, and I love the taste,
Mm-hmm.
but like about 8 or 12, like I do not digest it. Like I'm missing some
Really?
sort of
Wow.
enzyme.
Interesting. I also think that people, maybe we're just gossiping about work, but like people just loved, your office was just such a terrible location
was-
that like it was so close to the back desk that people would just gravitate in there and
Yeah.
you're like, out, shoot, leave me alone. Like anytime you had to go back to ask, you were
Yeah.
just like in direct line
I was
of fire.
I was in line of fire.
Mhm.
I had the bullseye. I had
Yeah.
the bullseye office.
Do you get swept up in the chattiness? And so you're like,
I
"Don't
do.
come in
You know
here"?
what? Like I'm very like I don't know. I don't know if the word is diurnal or something. Like in the morning, I don't like to chat as much. Come afternoon when the work's done, it's like people chill, relax a little bit. But in the morning, I'm like super hyper focused,
Mm.
and then I usually relax as the day goes on. So I could do a little chat, little weekend chat Friday afternoon. But Friday morning, I'm like, man, let's get this shit done.
You also pimp the med students the same way.
Oh yeah,
Aggressive
yeah, I run
in
out
the
of steam.
morning, and then
Yeah.
halfway through the case, you're like, "What's this kidney-shaped organ?"
Well, there's a great study in medicine about when primary care doctors recommend colonoscopy. So there's pretty set guidelines for that.
Mhm.
It showed the earlier on in the day that they met the patient, the more likely they were to recommend colonoscopy.
Really?
Because I do think that fatigue you get is real.
Well, I think
You
they
know?
did another study about with orthopedic surgeons recommending surgery, and they saw that earlier in the day, if you had your appointment first off, you would be more often to be recommended surgery, and then later in the day, they said like diet and exercise.
And because they probably want to fill out the paperwork.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Right.
but I think it just shows you that as much as you try to be rational and scientific, human beings are human
Yeah.
beings, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, I got to get down to pick up my son. I got to, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you try to separate that, but it's impossible to separate that from taking care of people.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us for the second time. Thank you
for having me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your secrets and your quirks.
That was a great pizza
That
secret.
was a great piece of
Exactly
secret.
in line with the podcast. Yeah.
That's fantastic. You're really one of us.
Yeah, truly.
And I get to keep the kazoo.
You get to keep the
do.
kazoo.
Man,
yeah,
steal.
Gift,
yeah.
yeah.
One day we'll
Well, thanks for
get
having me.
nice engraved kazoos, but for now you get Amazon special.
Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for
Well, yeah,
joining.
Thanks for having me.
I don't think I have any other questions. Do you?
No.
Are you ready to squawk out?
Yeah. You can find us on all the social media stuff. You know where to find us. You're good.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were like talking like in real life.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yes, but no.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
If you have any thoughts or questions for Ted, you can email us at weirdsofafeather@gmail.com and we'll pass
we know
that
where to find him, so
along.
we'll find him and ask him.
Yeah. Hunt
Yeah.
him down. All right. Yeah. I think we're good.
And now we squawk out, which is you give your best bird call out.
Okay.
Can be any bird, non-specific bird.
Okay, I got one.
All right, you got one?
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee.
Very good.
The suspense is killing me.
I know. It was worth it. Yeah. It was worth the wait.
All right.